Hi, this is Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're now on our fourth of our 5-minute history videos. And I'm here still in my living room in Bolton Hill, and say thanks again to my video production assistant, my daughter Leah. Today, even though we're inside, we're going to travel over to Fells Point and look at some of the oldest houses in the city, what are called the Caulkers Houses on Wolf Street. But before we get there, let's just say a word about Fells Point and where they are. If you know where Wolf Street is, it's the north-south street running from the harbor up to Hopkins Hospital Complex. And the 612 and 614 Wolf Street are down near the southern tip of that, right at not too far from Thames Street. But Fells Point was first sort of explored by Edward Fell in the 1720s, before Baltimore town got founded in 1729, and then really laid out by Edward and his wife in the 1760s. And his wife Anne was really the brainchild of the operation. She ensured that for every house or for every lot that they sold in the new Fells Point town, that it had a covenant that required the buyer to build a house for 400 square feet at least within 18 months. And this ensured that Fells Point was going to be a boom town, and the property values were going to soar. So we can thank Anne for getting Fells Point off to a really sharp start. Most of Fells Point originally, and most of Baltimore town, was built with wood. That was the material that was easiest to use and could go up quickly. And that included our houses on Wolf Street, the Caulkers Houses. They're some of the last 10 houses of the original Fells Point and Baltimore town still standing. And they're really unusual houses. We think they're the only houses of their kind on the East Coast, maybe in America. We think that there may be one other example or two other examples of the same similar housing style in Europe and England, but that's probably about it. So these are really, really special small houses. We know that they started out in the Fells family until about the 1740s, when we can look through the records and find that they were home to African American ship's caulkers. We know the names Henry Jones and John Whittington, at least, lived there. Ship caulking was a trade where basically you stuffed fiber into the cracks between the boards of ships to keep them watertight. And we know that we've got a couple other famous ship's caulkers who were in Baltimore. One was Frederick Douglass when he came over from the Eastern Shore, when he was brought over from the Eastern Shore. That was one of his trades. Another famous ship's caulker was Isaac Myers. If you've ever been to the Frederick Douglass Isaac Myers Maritime Museum, you know that that's the Isaac Myers that we're talking about. Myers, as a somewhat of an aside, Myers was a really interesting gentleman. He was the owner of the largest African-American maritime company in the United States right after the Civil War. He founded his company called the Chesapeake Maritime and Dry Dock Company, basically to try to help ship's caulkers, who were predominantly African-American, keep their jobs. The company was actually a cooperative, and so each of the caulkers owned a stake in it, which was really cool to begin with, but was even cooler because it meant that the white labor unions who were trying to muscle out the black workers from jobs basically couldn't get a toehold in the new company. But back to the Caulkers Houses on Wolf Street. We know that in the 1740s and 50s, these two families plus two other families lived there, and you'll see today it looks like they're just two houses. Originally, we think that there were actually two pairs of houses, so sort of doubles, but two of them. So there were likely four ship caulking families who lived there. The buildings stayed with the caulkers until at least the 1850s, and then went through a number of uses. Were eventually purchased by two sisters, Mary and Eleanor Dashiell, who happened to be descended from both the Dashiell family and the Leeke family, L-E-E-K-E. I believe there's an E on the end of that. The Dashiell and the Leeke families, which were two of the original founding families in Fells Point. The Dashiell sisters bequeathed them to the Preservation Society, which is a nonprofit organization that got its start in the 1960s and 70s, fighting against the proposed highway that would have paved over Fells Point and Federal Hill and Montgomery Street and Otterbein. So a great organization that's still going strong. They own them and are actively working to both structurally shore them up and find some good new uses for them. So I think I'll end this video by saying to the Preservation Society, to David Gleason, who's the chair of that organization, and his crew, I think there are a lot of us out there wishing you the best of luck, and we look forward to seeing some construction crews and some work on these really, really special houses at 612 and 614 South Wolf Street. Thanks, everybody, and we hope you tune in tomorrow.